Is the Mets bullpen the only thing holding them back from being a contender this year? I talk about that and more on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Locked On Mets is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. On the show today, we have a Mets series victory to discuss. I'll talk about the game in the first segment, but then in the second segment, I want to look at this bullpen. How can they get to a point where the bullpen does not hold them back this year? We'll talk about what the issue is there. Then in the final segment, I want to go through why I actually am starting to believe in this team, particularly the star player Francisco Lindor and the cast around him with this starting lineup. So we'll go through all of it. First, though, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, I'm coming to you live from my car studio here again. Parking garage under the hotel. Second night in a row after a Mets victory. I'm feeling more alive tonight, a little more awake after being here in D.C. for more than 24 hours and getting a full night of sleep last night. And I'll tell you what, I think I'm lucky. So, you're welcome, is I guess what I'm trying to say. I've been to 3 games this season. In those games, the Mets have won them all. So, Uncle Stevie, if you're listening to this, season tickets, but the problem is I don't live in New York. So, can you relocate me too? It'd be a lot. So we'll get into that at a later time. If you're listening, Stevie, we'll figure that out. But it was good. It was a good game again. This one, I think, was a little more enjoyable because the 9th inning scare was not as scary. So I walked away feeling a little bit better, but also still that sentiment was still there for me as we were walking out of the ballpark, having seen the Mets win another game of, what's wrong with this bullpen? So we're going to go through all of it. But let's start from the top. Let's start from the good parts of this game. David Peterson was great tonight. 6-pitch first inning. So he's cruising pretty much all game with a really low pitch count set up from that first inning. The Mets did miss some opportunities early to score some runs. Francisco Lindor, leadoff double, doesn't score. That's usually a bad omen, but the Mets were able to still eventually put up runs. Third inning, Tomas Nido and Francisco Lindor single. They're both stranded. That's even after Brandon Nimmo walks to load the bases. But JD Martinez strikes out, looking with the bases loaded. Now, in that spot, he was probably thinking, I think it was 0-2, probably going to get a breaking ball off the plate. Instead, just fastball, dots it, see you later. So those were the bad moments offensively. But the 4th inning, the Mets got on the board thanks to Harrison Bader with a 2-run homer. Now you had a lead. 5th inning, they broke the game open. Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, they each single. JD Martinez strikes out. Starling Marte then rips a triple that scores both runs. And I will say, I was hanging out with my friends Gerard and Ethan when that happened. We were at the game, of course, me and my dad. I had some listeners reach out to me on X saying that they were at the game as well and they'd like to link up. It was actually right when JD Martinez was up and striking out that we were walking up towards the concourse there to hang out with those guys. So shout out to Gerard and Ethan if you're listening. It was a lot of fun talking to you guys, chopping it up. And we saw some pretty good moments of the game with that triple by Marte and then Mark Vientos with the sac fly. All of a sudden, the Mets were up 5-0. David Peterson did give up a run in the bottom half of the inning on a couple of base hits, but was able to work out of any further damage. And he ends up entering the 7th inning with a 5-1 lead, sitting at 64 pitches. And at that point, I can't lie, I was thinking complete game. That's where my head was at. I was like, I don't even want to see anyone come out of that Mets bullpen. The one guy I'm cool with is Daniel Nunez, and I was hoping that if anything, we'd see him in the 9th, that Peterson would get to the 7th, get to the 8th, and it'd only be 3 outs that the Mets bullpen would have to cover. But it started to unravel for David Peterson in that 7th inning. He hits the leadoff man, Jesse Winker, who steals second base and then scores on a base hit. Peterson gave up another hit, and you saw Nunez was getting loose in the pen. They had a mound visit, and with C.J. Abrams up, the left-handed batter, it sort of felt like, all right, this is your last guy. And credit to Carlos Mendoza, not letting a game get away from him. I thought he managed the bullpen well tonight. It wasn't a lot of decisions to make. I just liked that he went to Nunez. And I thought he pulled the hook on Peterson at the right time. I think in the past, maybe we've seen him try to get that one extra out. And look, if he did try to keep Peterson in there when he was sitting, at early 80s in the pitch count, he finished with 81. So yeah, he was sitting at 81 pitches. I would have been okay with watching him pitch to the following batter after he got C.J. Abrams to pop out, but I liked the aggressive move because Nunez is throwing the ball great, and he came up in that spot, got a big strikeout, and the following inning, 1-2-3. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there, 9th inning, all right, only 3 more outs to cover. So Nunez, we'll talk about him more in the next segment. I love him right now. I absolutely love him. He's the one guy. Now, Pete Alonso crushed a home run for insurance in the top of the 7th, his 14th of the year. 12 of those 14 home runs have come in low-leverage situations. We'll also touch on that in the next segment as well, but just a little teaser there. Reed Garrett comes on, though. Let's talk about why I didn't just have a completely easy, breezy, chill game with no worries. So Garrett comes on. Got a 6-2 lead. He starts off Jesse Winker 0-2. Loses him. Walks Jesse Winker, which is just inexcusable when you have a 4-run lead. You cannot just give up base runners. Brutal. Then he gets 2 strikeouts. I'm feeling pretty good. We're sitting there. It was funny because my dad and I, when he got the second strikeout, we looked at each other and said, all right, now I'm sort of feeling good. They're like, I think at the same time we said, I feel a little bit better. And you felt comfortable for a moment. Then he gives up a base hit that scores a run. All right, so now all of a sudden, the butts are tight again, okay? You're clenching in your seat, wondering, oh, here we go. Then he walks C.J. Abrams. Now we are just already, like it's amazing because you actually look at what Reed Garrett does. For those of you who don't know, he gets the save. Or not the save. It was a 4-run lead. But he holds on to the lead. And you look at what happened. It was a walk, a base hit, and a walk. And then he got 3 outs, and he got a couple strikeouts. So it actually doesn't look as bad on paper as it felt in that ballpark, and I'm sure watching at home. But considering the backdrop of all the games that have been blown, when you see him give up the run, you're already, here we go. And then you walk another batter, so you bring the tying run up. The tying run up when you had a 4-run lead. Got ahead 1-2, and I'm telling you, so we had, like I said, we're staying out here. My mom's out here too because they're gonna head off to Chicago after this series here, and I'm gonna fly back home. So she's been just chilling at the hotel. She was gonna pick us up at the ballpark. So because we had her driving over, we wanted to start to make our way. We didn't want her waiting outside too long. So we were watching the last couple outs from the concourse. And I'll tell you, when it got to a full count, my dad just starts walking. He starts going towards the exit. Like, I don't even want to see it. I'm like, dude, we got to watch it, all right? Full count, fly ball, hit between Starling Marte, Harrison Bader. And here's the crazy thing that's so Mets. They collide on the play. Marte catches it. Now, it should be center fielder's ball. He should have came off of it. But regardless, I saw, like in my head, the pessimistic side of my brain saw the two of them, when they got close and were going to collide, I'm like, oh my God. They're going to collide. The ball's going to drop at their feet. Somehow everybody is going to score, and it's going to be a tie game. Like, I was just, it's going to happen like that. This is the angst of a Mets fan. But they escape. They get the win, and they win a series, and now they've won, 4 of the last 6 games they've played? So some positive vibes, a chance to complete a series sweep with your ace on the mound and Patrick Corbin opposite him. the Mets have a chance here to really have some nice vibes heading onto that bird across the pond to go play in London. So what I want to talk about, though, is this bullpen the only thing holding the Mets back? We'll go through that in just a minute. First, though, a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. This is the perfect time for me to talk about Game Time because I've got my tickets from Game Time the last 2 nights. First one, my dad's birthday. I shelled out a little bit more for those tickets. Wanted to make sure we got him great seats. But honestly, tonight, our seats pretty much as good. I got a flash deal where basically I got to pick. Well, I didn't get to pick. Excuse me. I got a flash deal where they pick for me a seat within 3 sections. It was 132 through 134. So they said get a seat somewhere in those sections. And because I was taking a flash deal, I got 20% off. So I ended up getting 2 seats all in for $68, and I'll tell you what, we were in section 133, row Y. It goes from single letters to then double letters, so we were, pretty much halfway down that section, kind of in the corner between, somewhere between first base and the warning track, like somewhere in the outfield there. It was really good seats down the first base line, honestly, and a great deal. Game Time is the only ticketing app that'll show you all-in prices up front that you can complete your purchase in less than a minute. 2 taps, you're all set. I highly encourage you to use Game Time, especially because if you're new to Game Time, you download the Game Time app, you create an account, you use the code LOCKEDONMLB, you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now, I teased this in the last segment. Pete Alonso this year has hit 14 home runs. 12 of them have come in what Fangraphs deems as low leverage situations. When you're talking about high leverage or even medium leverage situations, he has 1 home run apiece. So this leads me to a question. Is Pete Alonso clutch? Now, I had a Locked On Mets insider, this is our texting service, reach out to me today about this. And I do want to let the insiders know, if you send me a picture, I can't zoom in on it because I can only look at them through my computer. I can't see it, but the context of the conversation was this. He was saying that he saw from Jolly Olive that Pete Alonso is not clutch when there's runners on base in a close situation. So I was able to go to Fangraphs and look at leverage throughout his career. So again, Fangraphs has what's deemed as low leverage, medium leverage, and high leverage. So in his career, Pete Alonso in what's deemed as high leverage situations, sitting 236, 349 on base, 447 slug, a 796 OPS, that's on base plus slugging. He has a weighted runs created plus of 113, WRC plus, managed hitters on a league average of 100. So it's only 13% better than your league average hitter in high leverage situations. Medium and low leverage situations, he's a 250 hitter, 334 on base in medium leverage, 341 in low leverage, 519 slug in medium leverage, 541 slug in low leverage, OPS over 850 in both spots, actually 882 in low leverage spots, WRC plus of 130 in medium leverage, 139 in low leverage. So all of that tells us that when it is less stressful, when there's less pressure, this guy is better. That's what that tells us. But I think there's a massive flaw in the logic of just following those stats that way. So here's what I did a little bit of extra digging on. Look at walk rate. Pete Alonso's walk rate in high leverage situations goes from 9% all the way up to 13%. And that is over a large sample size of his career. So that tells you something. I want you to think about how Pete Alonso gets pitched in high leverage situations. They don't want to get burned by Pete Alonso. So you say Pete Alonso's not clutch, but also you must acknowledge that he's getting nothing to hit in those spots. Why is Pete Alonso great in low leverage situations when the bases are empty? He's great in those spots because they're actually pitching to him. So I think, Jolly Olive does great work over at Shea Station and John Boy and all that stuff. So I'm not going to fault him for this stat. And in some respects, he can be right. And this year, it is true as well. Like Pete Alonso needs to be more clutch. At the same time, you look at his career, When you have bases empty or men on base that aren't in scoring position, he's a 250 hitter. In his career with runners in scoring position, he's a 260 hitter. I honestly believe it's more of a matter of how he is pitched. That's what I really think it comes down to. And I think when you had the highest leverage situations, that's times where pitchers are giving him nothing. And so if he's going to get a hit in those spots, he's got to get a base hit on a bad pitch. And so that has led to some of those numbers. But I do appreciate all the Locked On Mets insiders for texting me. It's great to get questions, comments, go back and forth. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, be part of our texting service, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now that we got the Pete Alonso tangent set aside, let's talk about this bullpen, because I think this is the one thing that's holding the Mets back. You look at the lineup, and we'll talk about that more in the next segment, why I believe in them, but they're really starting to round into form. I think the rotation's pretty solid at this point. But you look at this bullpen, and it is terrifying trying to get outs late in games with a lead. Edwin Diaz needs to come back and be himself, and he threw 21 pitches in a bullpen session on Tuesday, according to Carlos Mendoza. So at this point, he could be ready to start a rehab assignment on Thursday. And I really do think this shoulder impingement, not that there was nothing there, but I really think this was almost a mental health rehab assignment. It was, yes, give him some rest, let his shoulder be good, but get this guy's head on straight. Get him on a rehab assignment, let him work on some things. And he's going to start a rehab assignment on Thursday. He's not eligible to return until June 14th. That was the one problem with putting him down or optioning or putting him on the IL. It's 15 days. So it's no longer a 10-day stint. That's only for position players. And so what that means in this case is he's going to have, if he does make that rehab assignment on the 6th, he's going to have a full week to make appearances, to maybe pitch a back-to-back somewhere in there, and really make sure that he's good to go. And hopefully through that process, he gets his confidence back, because when he comes in, if he is Edwin Diaz of old, or even if he's not 2022 Edwin Diaz, because that's a ridiculously high bar that he might not ever get to again in his career. I mean, that was one of the best seasons a relief pitcher has ever had. So even taking that back, if you're just saying, can he be the Edwin Diaz we saw in 2020 and 2021? That guy is going to help sit everybody else in line in this bullpen. And it's going to take a lot of the stress and a lot of the decisions away from Carlos Mendoza, because he's going to know who his guy is. Until then, I want Daniel Nunez closing games. And it sounds crazy, but I'm serious. This guy, I said it the other day, he's almost too dumb or too, like, again, I have no idea how intelligent the guy is, but the point is, he doesn't know to care. And I think that's what Reed Garrett was early on this season. I think that's what Reed Garrett is in the 7th inning. But when you put Reed Garrett in the 9th inning, he gets in his head. It is obvious. It's obvious. I don't think he has the stones to pitch in the 9th inning right now. I tweeted that after the game. And I'm sorry, that's how I feel. I think he needs to be a 7th inning guy, a guy that faces the top of the lineup at a big spot in the 6th inning. He's got great stuff. He looked unbelievable in the first game of this series, but you get him in the 9th, and all of a sudden he's walking batters when he's ahead 0-2. So I think that's one thing. He cannot be the closer. It's not him. And it's not Adam Ottavino. So you got to keep trying. Other guys. To me, that's the thing. Let's put other people in that spot. So Daniel Nunez is the one guy I'm looking at. Sean Reed Foley's the other one, just because you haven't seen it yet. Drew Smith, I mean, I don't love that. We've seen him pitch in leverage, but it's just, is he the best of some bad options? Potentially Danny Young. These are the guys that I trust right now, which is crazy. And I think Reed Garrett I trust if it's not the 9th inning. Adam Ottavino, same thing. I don't think he's cut out for the 9th. So if you have your 7th and 8th inning guys, that's great. When Diaz comes back, you'll be good, and you have other guys who are getting some trial by fire, like a Nunez, who maybe can enter that circle of trust. The Mets had to figure this out, to me, because Nunez has looked so good. Don't just say, hey, you're the closer before he's done it. But if you have another save opportunity, throw him in there and see what happens, because this guy, to me, just doesn't have fear. He trusts his stuff. He's got a great fastball slider combo. You can do well with that. Isn't that something that, I don't know, Edwin Diaz has? So with that, I think the Mets might have a guy they can trust, but something's got to click there, because if they keep on losing games or putting themselves in bad spots where you need multiple relievers to get through an inning, like they needed in game 1 of this series, everyone's more taxed, and then you just have a tired pen. If the Mets can figure that out, they're still in this race. They're 4 games out. 4 games out, despite being 9 games under 500. If they can go on a little run, if they win this one on Wednesday, and they head into London, they take one, they come home on a homestand, they play the Marlins, and they handle business there, a week from now, the whole conversation changes, not to mention Francisco Alvarez is going to come back too. So I want to talk about why I still have a little bit of faith, why I am all of a sudden sipping the Kool-Aid and believing in this team again just a little bit. So we'll get to that in a minute. First, though, a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers getting $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. If you want to bet today on the Mets game with a live same-game parlay, you could take Luis Severino with his over on the strikeouts. Maybe leave Mark Vientos is going to homer in this one. You can add that into a parlay, and the Mets are going to win it. Put it all together. You can win big. And if you want, you got Corbin on the mound on the other side. Remember that. So you can just bet the Mets on the money line, $5. If you win that bet, $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now is one of the best moments in the sports calendar. You got the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup Finals, and of course the Major League Baseball season. If you want to stay up to date with all of it, make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. Do I believe in the New York Mets? Can they turn me that quick? Of course they can. I'm an optimist, and the Mets won a series, and it's baseball, and that is the swing of emotions that you have as a fan. The Mets lose tomorrow, they suck again, they're not going to make the playoffs. That's just how it goes as a fan. But trying to remove the emotion out of it, I look at this team, and I think they've answered a lot of the questions of things that were plaguing them throughout the early goings of this season. They had that one great stretch, right? They got unbelievable pitching out of their bullpen between Edwin Diaz, Adam Ottavino, Reed Garrett, Brooks Raley. It looked really good. Jorge Lopez even. It looked really good for that stretch. They lose Alvarez, and their bullpen starts to plummet. Their rotation, in some respects, falls back as well. And everything that can go wrong did go wrong. And throughout that process, what they did not get a lot of is good production from their third base position, from their catcher position, from their second base position, and at times from the outfield. So how has that changed? And also not to mention shortstop at times from Lindor. But he really has been much better after that 1-for-38 start. So what's different? Well, third base, it's clear. Mark Vientos is the starting third baseman of the New York Mets, and that is a huge plus over Brett Beatty. Now, Beatty was great defensively, but you know what? Mark Vientos tonight made a diving stop, a great play, and really helped the Mets and helped David Peterson get through one of those innings. So credit to Vientos for continuing to work on his game. He has not looked like a liability at all defensively, and that shows up in his F-WAR total as well. He's not really improving that total, but he's not deterring it much with his defense like he might have in the past. So F4 is wins above replacement. It's how we measure players. It tells us who the most valuable players in baseball are. And Mark Vientos, going into the game today, was at a 1.1 F4 total, which trailed only Brandon Nimmo and Francisco Lindor on the New York Mets. That is how good he has been in a small sample size. One thing to look out for, he does have some fairly drastic splits. He's hitting .339 against lefties, .250 against righties, .400 on base against lefties, .306 against righties, .645 slug against lefties, .438 against righties, a .744 OPS against righties, and OPS over 1.3, so like over 1,300 against left-handed pitching. So he's much, much better against lefties, but I also would say it's about a 30 plate appearance or 30 at-bat sample on each side. It's nothing drastic. I believe in the bat. I do. So I'm all in on the fact that the Mets are better at third base with Vientos in the lineup every day. Now look at catcher. Omar Narvaez was statistically one of the worst players in all of baseball. You've now removed him from the team. Great. Luis Torrens, I said when they signed him, he might just be here for a week or two, and it seems like Alvarez is on the mend. Caught a combined no-hitter, by the way, in Brooklyn tonight. Went 1 for 3 with a walk. Right now, they say he's not going to be there for the London series, but he's probably going to be there right after that. So, a week from, when did they actually come back? They come back on the 11th, I believe. They play Sunday, and they have 1 day off. And then, so a week from, the 11th, so that'd be a week from Tuesday. A week from today as I'm recording, and a week from yesterday as you're listening, they'll have Alvarez back, and Torrens will be gone. And what has he done in the process, Torrens? He did have a huge double in Game 1 of the series that helped the Mets get a win. So that was a transaction the Mets made that has worked out great. And Nito is playing really well. So now the catcher position, I checked that off. I'm not concerned about it. Second base has been an issue. Jose Iglesias has looked great so far. He's a really good clubhouse guy. He plays hard. I think he's going to push McNeil to be better. I've been very hard on Jeff McNeil over the last week, particularly yesterday. I had another good conversation with an insider, again, our texting service, where he sort of made the case for Jeff as far as the fact that it's not the guy doesn't care. You see how frustrated he gets when the results aren't there. And I'd also argue that that's detrimental to the team to have temper tantrums every time you get out, but it's not like he's not trying, and he is, I'm sure, putting in some work to try to fix it. What I would say about Jeff McNeil is now that you had someone pushing him for playing time, maybe that's going to help. Maybe that's going to be the spark he needs, and it could be a platoon. It seems like a platoon right now. Carlos Mendoza has said that McNeil's still their second baseman, but Iglesias is making an impact on this team, and I think his presence is a positive impact alone as well. So that helps the club out a little bit. Then you got the fact that Francisco Lindor is playing at a great level right now. Over his last 13 games, he has 6 doubles and 2 home runs. If you go back and you remove that 1 for 38 start, if his season began on April 7th instead of when it started in March, Francisco Lindor would be hitting .260, .319 on base, .451 slugging percentage. Is that unbelievable statistics overall? No. Is that about in line with what we've seen from Lindor over the last couple of years? Absolutely. That's what a 770 OPS from Lindor with a .260 average. Again, that's about what you expect from a guy who is going to hit his home runs, he's going to drive in runs, and he's going to be a great Gold Glove caliber shortstop. And now we're seeing all of that come together. He has 9 home runs since April 7th, 29 RBIs, 123 WRC plus, means he's 23% better than your league average hitter. I think he was somewhere around that mark last year as well. And you look at his wins above replacement, 2.2 according to Fangraphs since April 7th. That is the 8th best mark in all of baseball. So Lindor is playing well again. Pete Alonso has broken out of his funk. He's not completely streaking hot right now, but he's definitely contributing. JD Martinez is a nice presence in that lineup. And I also think you're starting to see some more consistency from Harrison Bader and Starling Marte, who it feels like are getting force-fed a little more playing time as DJ Stewart and Tyrone Taylor get relegated a little bit more. And that's fine, because you want all those guys to be sharp. And when Alvarez comes back into the fold, all of a sudden you look at this lineup, and if Marte and Bader are hitting, I mean, you go, 8 deep when you have Alvarez? I mean, Jeff McNeil might be the only hole in the starting lineup offensively, honestly, and he could get it going too. So I really do have faith that this lineup is going to be able to consistently produce when Alvarez comes back and give you a chance a lot of different nights. The rotation, David Peterson, really good start. Tyler McGill, not the best start, but he had a great start in his first outing. I think those two guys make this rotation a little bit better. And you still have Jose Budo and Christian Scott waiting in the wings to be inserted back into the fold whenever you need another arm. So if Jose Quintana continues to struggle, the Mets can replace him. They can make that move. And this has been a franchise that has not been sentimental, and I love it. I love that they've been aggressive. Could you keep Omar Narvaez, the guy that's been around your team for the past year and a half? Could you keep him around for 2 more weeks and then you let him go for Francisco Alvarez? Because it was clear that Nido had earned the backup catcher job. Could you have done that? Sure. But guess what? Luis Torrens has helped win you a game and is better. And it was just cash. And so the Mets made that move to get better. Jorge Lopez embarrasses the franchise, the way he throws the glove and all the comments, everything. What do the Mets do? They don't waste any time. They don't beat around the bush. They cut him. And they've done that when they've been, in a hole with their bullpen as far as needing a fresh arm. Oh, we got a DFA guy. All right, we'll do it. So I think that lack of sentimentality where they're willing to make the move that helps the team today no matter what, that leads me to believe that if Jose Quintana doesn't figure this out, he's going to be out of the rotation. And that's really the main sore spot I see in that rotation at this current moment. So with a rotation that's pretty good, with a lineup that I still am starting to believe in, it's just about that bullpen. Can they figure that out? And my hope is that the timing of this IL stint was perfect for Edwin Diaz, because of those 15 days, this is sort of a mental health reset. 3 of them are off days. So, Yahoo London series is not going to be available for. He won't be available for the first series against the Marlins coming out of the break. But if Edwin Diaz can figure himself out in this 2-week time period that he has off, basically, and get back to being himself, with the find of Denel Nunez and Danny Young in that bullpen, maybe the bullpen can be good as well as you continue to move through this season. And if that clicks, the Mets could be a team that reels off some wins and gets right back in this race. Again, 4 games back. Part of the reason why I believe is because the rest of this league just simply sucks. And the third wildcard team, this year, it might be a team that's 2 games over 500. I think at some point, some of these teams should separate themselves from the pack, but the way things are trending right now, it's anyone's race for the taking, and that's why Steve Cohen is telling Eddie Martino that the Mets still believe in themselves as contenders, and they're trying to win this year. So we'll see if they can do it, but I like what I've seen the last couple days, and hopefully the Mets can complete the sweep, carry that momentum into London. I appreciate all of you for tuning in today. If you're listening on the audio side, please follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Appreciate all of you. Continue to subscribe. So we're trying to make a push to 9,000 subs. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, be part of our text and service, find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. You can follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. Now, for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. Of course, I'm talking about Locked On Sports Today.